want to know why Jon Jones and Daniel Cormier will never, ever find common ground? It is not just about the trash talk, the press conference brawls, or the head kicks. It is about a fundamental, deep-rooted sickness that infects both of these guys the second they're in the same room. They cannot even agree on the basic reality of a grappling exchange without it turning into a blood feud. Look at this absolute mess of situation that went down during this wrestling segment on the Alf Show. It is the perfect microscopic encapsulation of why these two men despise each other. You have a friendly, or at least supposedly friendly, wrestling competition. Takedowns, positional control, a little bit of sweat. It should be simple. You take the guy down, you get the points, you move on. But nothing is ever simple with Jones and Cormier. Nothing. Daniel Cormier comes out of this exchange puffing his chest, claiming absolute success. And why wouldn't he? He is an Olympian. When DC talks about wrestling, he is speaking a language he has studied since he was a child. He asserts that he was controlling the match. He says he was hitting successful takedowns. In his mind, he was dictating the pace, the space, and the physical reality of that mat. To Daniel Cormier, wrestling is a science of pressure and leverage, and he believes he applied that science flawlessly against the opposing fighters. He felt he was a hammer, and everyone else was a nail. But then you have Jon Jones. Jon does not look at wrestling the way DC looks at wrestling. Jon looks at grappling as an act of physical problem solving, where the only thing that matters is the final destination. Jon comes out of this exact same scenario claiming he got robbed by a technicality. He brings up the specific sequence, the Williams roll. If you do not know what the Williams roll is, it is a highly technical, slightly unorthodox scrambling maneuver. It requires length, it requires timing, and it requires a total willingness to embrace the chaos of scramble. You use a debating opponent, roll their momentum against them, and flip the position. Jon Jones is built for this exact type of move. He has the limbs of a spider and the fight IQ of a supercomputer. He explains that he hit this roll beautifully. He maneuvered his opponent, he scrambled, and what happened? He ended up on top. In the mind of Jon Jones, and frankly in the mind of anyone who has ever been in a fistfight, ending up on top means you won the exchange. You are in the dominant position. You are the one who can drop elbows. You are the one who dictates whether the fight stays on ground or gets back up. Jon argues that because he secured the top position, he succeeded. He executed a move. He reversed the dynamic. He ended up in control. Point blank, period. Give the man his 2 points. But here is where the absolute absurdity of the situation kicks in, and where the rulebook becomes a weapon. The officials step in. They look at this beautiful, chaotic, effective scramble that Jon just pulled off, and they shake their heads. They tell him, no, we are operating under freestyle wrestling rules today. Now, if you are an MMA fan, you might not fully grasp how violently different freestyle wrestling rules are from real fighting or even folk-style wrestling. In freestyle, exposing your back to the mat is the ultimate sin. It does not matter if you're doing it on purpose. It does not matter if you're doing it for a fraction of a second to hit a brilliant sweep. If your shoulders point toward the ceiling and your back rolls across that canvas, you are giving away points. The sport is designed to heavily penalize anyone who puts themselves in a position where they could theoretically be pinned. So Jon Jones, hitting this Williams roll, has to physically move across his own back to execute the sweep. He exposes his shoulders to the mat to generate the momentum needed to flip his opponent. In a cage, this is genius. In a Brazilian jiu-jitsu match, this is a beautiful reversal. In freestyle wrestling, it is a catastrophic error. The officials retroactively apply this freestyle criteria to Jon's scramble. They look at the exact same sequence where Jon ended up in dominant top control, and they completely invalidate his success. They tell him that not only does he not get the 2 points for securing the top position, but he is actually being penalized. Think about the psychological whiplash of that moment. Jon Jones thinks he just styled on his opponent. He thinks he just pulled off a slick, high-level grappling transition. He is expecting to be up 2 points. Instead, the arbiters hit him with a 4-point penalty, -4 points, for a move where he ended up on top. You can imagine the absolute disgust on Jon's face. To a guy who has spent his entire adult life fighting in a cage where the only rule that truly matters is survival and dominance, This scoring adjustment feels like a bad joke. He is being told that his physical dominance is actually a mathematical failure. He loses by 4 points because of a technicality that dictates how his shoulder blades interacted with the canvas during a transition. And this is where Daniel Cormier steps in. And this is where the gasoline hits the fire. Because DC is not going to side with Jon. DC is never going to side with Jon. DC is a wrestling purist. He knows the freestyle rulebook inside and out. To Cormier, rules are rules. If you agreed to wrestle under freestyle criteria, you do not get complained when the freestyle criteria bite you. You can see the dynamic perfectly. DC is standing there, probably with that smug, knowing grin on his face, validating the officials. He is looking at Jon like, you might be a great cage fighter, but you do not respect the pure sport of wrestling. DC claims his own success was legitimate because he played by the actual rules of the game. He hit traditional takedowns. He controlled the center. He did not rely on flashy, rule-breaking scrambles that exposed the back. Jon is looking back at him, completely unbothered by the purity of the sport, completely infuriated by the lack of common sense. Jon's argument is primal. I am on top of the guy. If this were real, he would be unconscious right now. How can you possibly tell me I lost that exchange by 4 points? This is the eternal divide between these two men. It is not just a disagreement over a specific takedown on a television show. It is a clash of entire philosophies. Cormier is the institution. He represents the Olympic Committee, the rule book, the established order how things are supposed to be done. He believes that greatness comes from mastering the rules and beating everyone within those strict confines. When DC says he won his matches, he means he checked every box the judges were looking for. Jones is the anomaly. He is the guy who looks at the rule book, laughs, and figures out how to weaponize the gray areas. He does not care about the established order. He cares about the result. To Jon, a rule that says you lose points for sweeping a guy and ending up on top is a stupid rule, and he has no problem loudly disrespecting a stupid rule. When you put these two opposing worldviews in the same room over something as testosterone-fueled as a wrestling match, it is never going to stay civil. It cannot stay civil. What starts as a technical debate over the mechanics of a Williams roll instantly devolves into a referendum on who is the better man. The argument escalates. It is no longer about freestyle versus folk style. It is no longer about 2 points versus 4 points. It becomes an intense, aggressive back and forth about reality itself. Jon is essentially calling the entire scoring system a fraud, and by extension, he is calling DC's reliance on that system a crutch. DC is calling Jon undisciplined, technically flawed in the pure sport, and incapable of accepting defeat gracefully. You have to understand the ego involved here. Neither of these guys has ever backed down from an argument in their lives, let alone an argument with each other. Every single word they speak is loaded with a decade of hatred. When Jon argues that he won the exchange, he is not just trying to convince the officials. He is trying to force DC to admit that Jon is the superior grappler. He wants DC to look at that top position and acknowledge that Jon got the better of the man. DC will literally choke on his own tongue before he gives Jon Jones credit for a sloppy, rule-breaking scramble. DC digs his heels in. He points to the scoreboard. He points to the officials. He relies on the empirical fact that, under the agreed-upon rule set, Jon made a massive error and paid the price. The tension in the room changes. It stops being a television segment. It stops being a fun little debate about grappling mechanics. The air gets heavy. The voices drop an octave. You get that physical tension, that immediate, visceral sense that these two men are about 30 seconds away from throwing hands. Because when you strip away the Alf Show setting and you strip away the unnamed opponents they were wrestling and you strip away the debate about the Williams roll, you are left with the core trauma of their rivalry. Jon Jones believes he is physically superior to Daniel Cormier in every conceivable way, and he gets violently angry whenever anyone, especially DC, suggests otherwise. Daniel Cormier believes Jon Jones is a rule bender who gets away with murder, and he gets violently angry whenever Jon refuses to play by the same rules as everyone else. This whole incident is just a microcosm of their UFC careers. Think about it. Jon using a technique that technically violates the rigid structure of the sport to achieve a devastating practical result. DC demanding that the structure be respected. The official stepping in to penalize Jon. Jon throwing his hands up in disbelief, feeling persecuted by a system he thinks is beneath him. It is the exact same dynamic we saw with eye pokes, with drug tests, with referee warnings inside the Octagon. Jon is always pushing the boundary of what is allowed, relying on his freakish talent to bail him out. When he hits that Williams roll, he knows he is exposing his back. He just does not care because his fighting instincts override his wrestling discipline. He feels the sweep, he takes it. He assumes the sheer dominance of ending up on top will outweigh the technical infraction. When it does not, his reality fractures. He cannot process the idea that a referee would look at him sitting on a man's chest and say, "You are losing." It breaks his brain. So he lashes out. He attacks the rules. He attacks the judges. He attacks DC for defending the judges. And DC is standing there, the ultimate company man of combat sports, shaking his head. DC loves the rules because the rules are what separate civilized sport from a street fight. DC respects the grind of learning how to scramble without exposing your back. It is hard. It takes years of drilling to build that muscle memory. So when he sees Jon just carelessly roll across his shoulders and then complain about getting dock points, DC feels insulted. He feels like Jon is mocking the very sport that gave DC his identity. This is why they end up in each other's faces. It is not manufactured for the cameras. The physical tension is real because the ideological hatred is real. Jon looks at DC and sees a rigid, limited athlete who hides behind rulebooks. DC looks at Jon and sees a reckless, arrogant talent who refuses to respect the discipline of the craft. You can analyze the grappling all day. You can break down mechanics of the Williams roll. You can debate the merits of freestyle scoring. You can argue whether a 4-point penalty is too harsh for a momentary back exposure. But none of that actually matters. What matters is that you put Jon Jones and Daniel Cormier in a room. You give them a microscopic point of disagreement. And within 5 minutes, they are ready to rip each other's heads off. It is the greatest, most toxic rivalry in the history of combat sports, and it does not even need a cage to manifest. It just needs a wrestling mat, a referee, and a questionable score. The second those elements are in place, the explosion is inevitable. They will never agree. They will never shake hands and say, "Fair point." They will take this argument about a Williams roll to their graves, each utterly convinced that the other is living in a delusion. And as fans, we just get to sit back and watch the collateral damage of two massive egos colliding over and over again, trapped in a loop of eternal hostility.